Duffy just got lucky with a handful of All-Americans here that he cherry-picked to win some games. But actually, it wasn't Duffy that built the Underground Railroad, I always say. It was the black high school coaches in the South that laid down the first track.
So they were very receptive to Michigan State. Now, Michigan State does have, I think, a reputation. Maybe I get it from Michael Moore wearing those Michigan State caps of being, I guess, would you say that it sort of as a campus is sort of like a Texas or a Berkeley in terms of a cultural feel, Michigan State?
Yeah, well, what Duffy was doing fit right in with the president, John Hanna.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very progressive man and built Michigan State from a small school into the major power that it is now. And what John Hanna, when the civil rights movement exploded in the 50s, Dwight Eisenhower named John Hanna the first Civil Rights Commission chairman in 1957. So Hanna was always on that same page, even ahead of Duffy Jordan. And so they just fit together like a glove when all these black high school coaches wanted to send their star players up to play for Duffy. And John Hanna was welcome to it. And here's the other key thing about Michigan State. You mentioned earlier about the 1966 game of the century.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State had 23 black players, 11 black starters. Jimmy Raye was the black quarterback. There were no black quarterbacks in the 60s. And then the two black team captains voted by the players were George Webster and Clinton Jones. And they played Notre Dame, and Notre Dame only had one black player, Alan Page.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, Alabama was the other top unbeaten team, and they were segregated into the 70s. So Duffy was always ahead of the game, and that reputation just served him well with Southern high school coaches.
I do want to say that I know you're speaking a little, just a wee bit of hyperbole with there were no black quarterbacks because, of course, Willie Thrower was the first NFL quarterback of African American heritage, and he debuted for the Bears in 1953, but I believe there was a 16-year gap between African-American quarterbacks in the NFL. So, I mean, obviously Grambling had one, that sort of thing, but I do understand the point that you're making. They were few and far between outside of Jimmy Page in major college football. We are talking to Tom Shanahan. He is the author of Raye of Light, which is a book on the 66 Spartans. Now, one of the things you mentioned there was that Michigan State was, you said a small school into the Big Ten or a major college football power, certainly in the mid-60s. And Tom Shanahan, that got me thinking, wait, yeah, Michigan State of the traditional Big Ten schools, they were the last to join. I mean, it was Big 9 before, I think it was 49 that Michigan State joined the Big Ten. So I know that a lot of schools, were able to be, because they were integrating, successful. Duquesne, Loyola, UTEP in basketball, for instance, enjoyed success that maybe they didn't in later years because they were ahead of the curve in integrating. And I just want to say, what was that like? I mean, how did that help Michigan State grow? Give me an idea of what Michigan State was like prior to 1949 and joining the Big Ten.
Well, it was, like I said, it was a smaller college. John Hanna, always the sharp mind that he was, he recognized that there were going to be a lot of soldiers coming home from World War II on the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm.
So he made Michigan State an attractive place for GIs to come. So the enrollment started building from there. John Hanna had a good relationship with the Notre Dame president, Theodore Hesper, and they agreed to play games, even though Notre Dame was kind of ahead of Michigan State at that time until Biggie Munn elevated the program. And so it all grew from there. But, back to your point about Willie Thrower, Willie actually played at Michigan State.
Oh.
That was one of the reasons. Yeah, he played at Michigan State, and that was in the 50s. He was actually the backup to an All-American named Tom Usick. But the fact that he even played quarterback there was one of the reasons Jimmy Raye was felt confident he'd be given a fair chance at Michigan State. And then the other thing about the other schools that were integrated, like I mentioned, Michigan State had 23 black players, which doesn't sound like much compared to now. But Notre Dame had one. And schools, even with a long history of integration back in those days, typically limited their rosters to 4 to 5 to 6 black players.
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to what I was saying that, John Hanna had no restrictions on Duffy. And the perfect example of this, a lot of this stuff I didn't know until I dug into the research. I started realizing a lot of stories about Alabama and USC in 1970 didn't add up. In 1967, so Duffy wins the national title with Notre Dame. They were co-champions by the National Football Foundation. 23 black players compared to Notre Dame's 1. In 1967, USC, with its long history of integration, they won the national title. They only had 7 black players on that team. But by 1972, after Duffy had set the model for the future, when USC won its next national title, they had 23 black players.
Interesting.
So Michigan State literally changed the face of the game.
Okay, I want to touch upon 1970 and that Trojans Crimson Tide game that has gotten so much publicity over the years. But you mentioned Tom Usick was starting over Willie Thrower back in the day at Michigan State. Now, did Usick have a son that was a quarterback at Pitt under Johnny Majors? Am I getting that name right?
I don't know about him having a son. He was also a great baseball player. In fact, he was the MVP of the College World Series, I think in '54. And then he played a little bit of minor league baseball, and he played for the Boston Patriots before they became the New England Patriots.
Double check that.
I don't know.
Double check that, because there was a Tom Usick that in 1976, Johnny Majors really may have revolutionized a lot of college football when he went to Pitt and just gave scholarships out left and right. Said, we're not getting, it was sort of a gentleman's agreement of how many limitations you could have, and he says, forget about this. We're not getting slaughtered all the time. And he gave out scholarships to everybody but a walk-on named Tom Usick. And by the time Pitt in 1976, and they won a national championship that year, and Usick was a starting quarterback for the team. He later became a Pennsylvania State legislature. And I think that's his son. I'm not 100%, but I think that's his son.
Yeah, I'll need to check that out. And, of course, Tony Dorsett was in that group.
Yes. But Usick, he was the last Panther to wear 13 before Dan Marino. I'm showing my Pittsburgh roots here and all this, but yeah, I mean, I actually think what you're telling me, because I've talked to you and interviewed Usick before, and I actually think what you're telling me that I think that's the same family. I'm 95% sure it is. But anyway, we are talking to Tom Shanahan. He is the author of the book Raye of Light, which chronicles the 1966 Michigan State Spartans and their contributions to integrating college football. And you're really giving the Spartans a lot of credit here for integrating. And you say that old idea that Bear Bryant said, let's schedule the Southern California Trojans and take a beating so that Alabama, while George Wallace is our governor, or running for governor, I guess he was in 70, but that sort of feel, we will be able to integrate in Alabama where we weren't able to before. You're not 100% sold on that story. Tell me why.
No, and like you, I had always heard that story and accepted the myth. But when I started doing my research on Michigan State, I realized a lot of things didn't add up. My original goal was to identify exactly what was the Underground Railroad, because they had about 7 great stars off those teams, and as you know, nobody goes 7 for 7 in college recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
I knew there had to be more players. And what I found out is that Duffy had been recruited 44 black players from the South. And I'm talking about from the South, not Detroit Flint kids.
Sure.
And from 1959 to 1972. And by coincidence, that first one in 1959 was a guy named Clifton Rhodes, father of Willie Rhodes, the College and Pro Football Hall of Famer. And Clifton hurt his knee in spring football his freshman year and never played. But he came from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, escaped segregation. And so he always said, and it's in the book, that he was indebted to Michigan State for not only the chance to go to Michigan State, play football, graduate, but for the life he provided for his family. And so I started realizing also when I looked at that 1970 game, USC, the myth is that Bear Bryant would invite USC and the Alabama fans would see this team that looked like Grambling beat them. And the truth is, USC only had 5 starters on that team. They were still making the transition from what I told you earlier, to having 7 black players on their 67 national championship team and 23 on their 72 national championship team. But in 1970, they only had 5 black starters. And one of them was Jimmy Jones, who was a black quarterback. So I've always contended in my book. Well, let me back up for a second. First of all, Clem Briscoe, who was a longtime assistant at Alabama, a devoted fan of Bryant. He was a curator in their museum after his coaching days. He says there's no truth to that rumor that he wanted to lose the game to teach his Alabama fans time to integrate. And another reason for that is Wilbur Marshall had already signed a scholarship in 1970.
I thought so, yeah.
He was a freshman, and freshmen were ineligible in those days. So he was already on the team, and the only reason Bear Vine found out about Wilbur Marshall was because the Alabama high schools had finally been forced to desegregate. So Wilbur Marshall went from his black high school to a white high school that was now integrated, that Bear Bryant had recruited for a long time. But anyway, so my point is, so none of that's true about the point he was trying to make to fans. And let's forget the fact that Bear Bryant was a god in Alabama. He could do whatever he wants. Who was going to fire Alabama? Who was going to fire Bear Bryant if he signed a black recruit without the booster's approval? Nobody. So, the thing that I started to realize, and I make this point in the book too, if Bear Bryant wanted to start recruiting more black players, he should have wanted to convince his fans that would include black quarterbacks. Because here was Jimmy Jones from UNC, came in and led the big rout of Alabama. Well, who was a senior at Huntsville, Alabama, that same 1970 season? A guy named Condredge Holloway. And Holloway had said, of course, Holloway was the first black quarterback in the SEC at Tennessee. And Holloway had said that Bear Bryant told him he wanted to come and play as a defensive back. The boosters wouldn't like it if he played quarterback. Well, if he wanted to really make a point to his boosters, and he wanted to recruit Condredge Holloway to play quarterback, here was your example: Jimmy Jones leading an offense that shredded Alabama, and anywhere do you hear that mentioned anywhere. So that's just one of the many myths surrounded by that 1970 UNC Alabama game. And as Winston Churchill said, a lie is halfway across the world before the truth gets its pants on it.
Look, Condredge Holloway is a very popular man in Tennessee. I mean, he's the last guy to walk through the tee when the Volunteers take the field. But, I mean, to play devil's advocate, I could say, well, Holloway never beat the Crimson Tide. That's when, 1970, that's when that long losing streak the Vols had to the Alabama Crimson Tide started. Didn't end until 1982. So, I mean, let me just ask you this. I mean, do you think that Holloway was good enough to play at Alabama, since he lost every time he played him?
Well, he started as a sophomore, didn't he?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So, you started the SEC as a sophomore, and then he wasn't a running quarterback, so he didn't have the arm for the NFL, especially the NFL in those days. But he went up and played in Canada. I don't know who the Alabama quarterback. Actually, it was Scott Hunter. But I mean, talent had nothing to do with it. Bear Bryant was a racist, and he dragged his feet on integration, and tons of people have protected his image with these myths around that 1970 UNC Alabama game.
Interesting. It may be one of the reasons why it seems like people now are very eager to say, oh, Nick Saban is the greatest coach in the history of Alabama. I mean, you get a lot of that, nowadays, this sort of thing. Perhaps you're onto something there. So let's...
I don't know my SEC history, but Holloway would have won some, at least some second-team honors, I would guess, if not first-team. I mean, he went off and played in Canada.
Well, what I look at that time is, and this again goes to my Pittsburgh roots, okay, Tom Shanahan, author of Raye of Light, was John Stallworth. Okay, because John Stallworth came to the Steelers from Alabama A&M, and he eventually made the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I'm thinking, if Stallworth came along like 2 years later, or if Alabama was ahead of the curve 2 years more, wouldn't he have gone to Alabama or Auburn? Wouldn't he have played in the SEC? Obviously, he had the talent to do so, and he went to a hometown university, Alabama A&M, but that was the black school. And, the Steelers were ahead of the curve in scouting the black colleges at that time. So they were able to get John Stallworth in the 4th round. Eddie, it had been a year one way or the other for either entity, or let's just say, maybe Stallworth goes and plays for the Crimson Tide. Maybe he's more well-known. Maybe he's drafted higher. Who knows how football history has changed then?
Yeah, well, not only was he from Alabama A&M, he was from a high school in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
So, to me, that's just, and I mentioned that in my book, too. I mean, to me, that's just more evidence. Bear Bryant didn't care about integrating. He dragged his feet. How much of a racist he was, I guess, is debatable, but he certainly didn't do anything. He's a leader. He was a godlike figure in Alabama. Black people and people were having their homes and their churches bombed.
Yeah. I mean, a famous 16th Street. 16th.
He just went along with the tide, so to speak.
Yeah, Birmingham was known as Bombingham back in those days and all this.
Exactly.
Tell us about Tony.
Girls in 1963.
Oh yeah, that's a well-known story. Tell us about Tony Dungy. How did he come about writing the foreword to your book? What does he have to say too?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that question. Gee, Tony Dungy wrote the foreword. How did you get him? Well, Jimmy Raye, in addition to being, and this is another thing about Duffy Daugherty, he not only gave black players like Jimmy Raye from the South a chance to play and go to school, but he got Jimmy Raye into coaching, and another one of the Spartans from the Underground Railroad was Sherman Lewis from Louisville, Kentucky. He was a halfback and third in the 1963 Heisman Trophy voting to a guy named Roger Staubach. So, but anyways, Duffy hired Sherman Lewis on his staff in 1969, and then Jimmy Raye in 1971. And back then, there just were very few black coaches, assistant coaches in major college football because, it's just like any other business. And this is the reason for the Rudy rule. If you're a white coach and there's job opening, who's in your pipeline? Your old friends and your colleagues. Well, before integration, that didn't include any black coaches. So Duffy got Sherman Lewis and Jimmy Raye into the pipeline. Jimmy Raye enjoyed being a mentor for younger black coaches. And one of them was Tony Dungy. Tony has great respect for Jimmy. So when Jimmy and I were talking about who should we have write the forward, and I suggested Tony Dungy because, there's no bigger name of black football coaches than him with his Super Bowl and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And Jimmy just called him up, and that was it.
I remember when Tony Dungy was the bright young defensive coordinator at 28, youngest defensive coordinator in the league, teaching a bend but don't break defense to the Steelers on 3rd and long. So that shows you there about Tony Dungy and all that. I don't necessarily remember him playing and the spot he had at quarterback for the Steelers back in the day, but I do remember him as their defensive coordinator. And in fact, Chuck Noll almost quit when he was asked to fire him back in the day. That's another story too. But I'm showing too many of my Pittsburgh roots. Here we go. Man, am I doing that really? Can I do that too much? I don't know. That's debatable. I am in Tennessee. And talking a lot about, maybe changing the perspective, some of the myths or ideas, shall we say, of what has been recorded in college football history. His name is Tom Shanahan. The book is Raye of Light. The website, rayoflightbook.com. That's rayoflight.com. Raye has an E on the end of it. But also, I'm sure you can buy it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Do you get the cut if you buy it new on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all finer bookstores?
Correct, yeah.
You do get the cut? So you still get the cut if you buy it from, I don't know, the store.
Right.
Okay, so,
Well, the royalties, best royalties come from the publisher, August Publications.
Ah, okay.
Now Google August Publications and Raye of Light.
August Publications, Raye of Light, or Raye of Light book. Don't forget to put the E on the end of Raye. His name is Tom Shanahan. He has done a lot of research, and, well, there you go. Some interesting stories about college football and how it began to integrate. Tri-City Sports Now. I'm going to come back after this with one quick note.